What is up, beautiful people? Zen here from The Journey Into, and in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the one concept that opened my mind and changed my life forever. Yes, my friends, that concept is known as the cash flow quadrant. Now, if you've never heard of this concept before, you're definitely in for a treat. But if you've heard of this concept before, stay tuned because I'll be adding in my own perspective on this concept, which for some might be able to turn on some light bulbs, and for others might just be enough to take you from wherever you are to the next level. So, stay tuned. Hope you learned something new, and if you did, apply it right away. And don't forget to smash that like button. Let's go! Yeah, people come. Yeah, people go. All right. So, like I mentioned before, we are going to be talking about the cash flow quadrant. So, what is the cash flow quadrant exactly? Now, this concept was created by an entrepreneur named Robert Kiyosaki, as far as I know. Okay, it could have been something far before that, but I've learned it from Robert Kiyosaki, who is an entrepreneur and also a author of a New York Times best-selling book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, okay? This book really was revolutionary for its time, and it still has great concepts to this day, right? Because they share ideas and information as to the true difference between a liability and an asset. They share concepts as to why the rich continue to keep getting rich and why the middle class is disappearing, right? And in the book, Robert Kiyosaki also introduces the concept of the cash flow quadrant, where he basically shares with us that there's actually more than one way to be able to make an income. See, when I heard of this cash flow quadrant, it really did open up my mind because as far as I've ever known, and from the 8 years of post-secondary education that I've gone through, I've only known of one way to be able to make an income, right? And for me, the way that I've learned, which is majority of the way that we've done it, is to go out there and get a good job, right? But what Robert Kiyosaki shares with us is that there's actually 4 ways to be able to make a legitimate income in this world that we live in, and that's what he calls the cash flow quadrant, right? Which actually just excited me because I like options, right? So what we're going to do right now is actually jump into my whiteboard, and I'm going to give you a visual representation of what the cash flow quadrant is all about. All right, so what you see here is my digital whiteboard of the cash flow quadrant, all right? So I just put up the structure here so I don't have to waste time creating it for you. But just like I mentioned before, Robert Kiyosaki shares that there's 4 different ways to be able to make a legitimate income in our world today. And that's what is shown through these 4 different quadrants, okay? Now, what Robert Kiyosaki shares with us is that although there are 4 different quadrants of different ways to be able to make an income, he also shares that they're actually separated into 2 different halves, okay? So there's a left side as well as the right side. All right, and respectively, they're considered the employee mindset and the entrepreneur mindset, okay? Now, I want to make this clear right now that there is no right or wrong way to be able to make an income, nor is there a better or worse way of a mindset to have, right? This is just a reality of what's existing in our world right now. So what he shares with us is that majority of us are actually on this left side of the quadrant, okay? Now, the reason why we're here is because of formal education is just part of society, right? Our formal education teaches us to get a job, which helps us develop the employee mindset. So usually out of high school, out of post-secondary education, out of the formal education system, we go out there and we get a job, okay? When we get a job, we fall in line of the first quadrant, which is the employee quadrant, okay? Majority of us are in this quadrant. I'm in that quadrant, right? We're all, like, again, 97% of us are in this quadrant because that's all we've ever known. This is the mindset that we develop. Now, being part of this quadrant, the way that we actually make our income is that we trade our time for money, right? Which makes sense. All right, so if you go to work, sometimes you go to a job, you get a job that's $25 per hour, right? Then you're getting, for every hour you put in that job, you get $25, right? So after a full works week, which is usually 40 hours, you get 40 times 25, which is, oh my gosh, why don't I know? Which is about $1,000 per week, which is a decent, which is a good income, which can definitely sustain some lifestyle here, right? But the crazy thing about being an employee is that there's actually like a wonderful thing called taxes, okay? So although on a 40-hour work week, if you make $25 an hour, you should be able to take home $1,000. However, because we get taxed, this money goes towards the government, and you'll take home probably about, so I'm going to say 40 hours gives you about $1,000 per week, right? But you'll probably take home, this is just a gross estimate, probably $800 due to taxes. Okay, that's just the reality of how it goes. Now, sometimes, depending on where you are and how good you are at budgeting, this may be enough for your lifestyle. But if it isn't, and you want to be able to make more money, or if you want to be able to enjoy leisurely activities with your family and friends, and you want to be able to make more money, what we tend to do, and I'm guilty of it, is that we go out there and get either a second job, or we go out there toward our primary job location and ask for more time, right? Either way, we've got to put more time to make more money, okay? Whether you get a second job, whether you improve your position, or whether you make more hours in your current job, what happens is that, yes, you work more hours, you make more money, but the drawback is that you actually get more taxed. Okay, so at any job that we have in North America, at least, the more money you make, the more taxes you get. That's just the reality of being an employee. Okay, now again, there's nothing wrong with having a job. There's great jobs out there. There's being a teacher, there's being doctors, there's dentists. There's a lot of great jobs out there. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it, but it can be tight for a lot of the middle class. Why is that? It's because, one, we're actually making an agreement with an employer to be told how much we are worth, okay? Sometimes people think they're worth a lot more than $100 per hour. People think they're worth a lot more than $25 per hour, right? However, in order to be able to get whatever you're worth, you've got to make that agreement with an employer. So if an employer deems you worth, let's say, $40 an hour, then you say, okay, I'll work for you for $40 an hour, and that's what you do for the rest of your life. You might get some increases here and there, 50 cents every 5 years, or whatever it is, but then that's what you're stuck in, right? So you get $25 an hour, $50 an hour, whatever it is, you're pretty much dictated how much you are worth, okay? So that's why it can be tight. Another reason why having a job might be tight is because you're also limited just to the time. There will always be a cap of how many hours you can work, right? So, or how much you can actually earn. What do I mean by that? There's 24 hours in a day, okay? There's 7 days in a week. When you're working a job and you're trading your time for money, the most that you can actually make in 1 week is 168 hours. Meaning that if you're, for example, with this $25 an hour position, if you worked every single day for every single hour of the day, the maximum that you could ever take home in 1 week, right? This is at 25. Is $4,200. And that's just the gross pay. If you take taxes into consideration, you're probably taking home half of that because of the different brackets. So you're probably taking home $2,000 every week, which is not bad. I'm not saying that's bad at all. $8,000 a month is far more than enough to be able to make a living, but you are working every single hour, every single day, all right? So you don't really have much time to do life. Okay, so that's just one of the reasons why it might be tight to have a job, because you're capped by the number of hours you can work, okay? And the last reason why having a job could be tight is because the last reason over here, number 3, is that if you don't go to work, guess what? You don't get money. Some people are pretty lucky, are in a good position where they can have like long breaks and still get paid. And some places pay you to have a vacation, right? But let's say, for example, if you want to have like a 6-month vacation, your employer is going to say, okay, 2 of those weeks out of your 6 months we'll pay for it, but the rest of the 5 months and 2 weeks, we're not going to pay you any money. So that's just another reason why having a job might be tight. Again, your income is tied into time. So a lot of people realize this and they want to be able to do a little bit better. All right. So what they do is they go into what they call the self-employed quadrant. Okay. The beauty about being in the self-employed quadrant, so again, this is another way of creating an income, is that you're still tied to time. Okay. But the beauty of it now is that you actually have tax benefits because you're considered self-employed, a sort of business owner, okay? And you also have a little more control, meaning that you can get to choose what you want to do, right? So self-employed people include general practitioners with their own clinics, dentists with their own clinics, as well as tutors, etc. Anybody who is pretty much like self-contracted or working for themselves are self-employed, right? Which is great because you can choose how much you're worth. If you're a tutor, you can say, I'm going to charge my students $40 an hour. Or if it's going to be a little bit more of an expertise, I'm going to charge them $60 an hour, right? And if you work good enough, you can actually develop the clientele. Same thing with dentists and general practitioners. They can say, I'm going to charge, well, they have like connections with the OHIP, but you get the idea, right? You have a little bit more choice of, one, identifying how much you're worth, and 2, you can actually work the amount of hours you want to. So as a tutor or as a dentist clinic, you can actually schedule them in around your schedule, meaning you have more control over your time. But the drawback still is that your income is still tied in with time, meaning that if you go on vacation and you're not there to tutor your student or not there to fix the teeth of your clients, you still don't get paid. Okay. But again, there are a lot of benefits about doing this. You get tax benefits and you get to have a little bit more control. But there's still more ways that people are making an income. And this, the right-hand side quadrant, is the ways that I've never heard before this concept. Okay. So what Robert Kiyosaki shares with, and what most people are doing, a small percentage of people who go from the employee to the self-employed, they start developing a bridge to get over to what they call the business owner quadrant. Now, the way that business owners actually create their income is actually pretty cool, okay? Over here on the left-hand side, we trade in our time for money. Business owners, they trade in their time and money to develop assets. They create assets and systems. What do I mean by that? The perfect example that I usually use is McDonald's, okay? The business owner of McDonald's takes his time and his money and buys a franchise, okay? That franchise is a system that will get a McDonald's up and running, okay? McD's. What happens is that he goes out there, he finds the land, gets the location going through, he hires the front house, right? He hires the back house. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He hires a supervisor and a manager, okay? Let's just say that's his system for his McDonald's, okay? Now imagine that each one of these people work a minimum of 8 hours a day. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 people at 8 hours in one day is equal to 80 hours in a day. When I heard this, that's when my mind went, whoa. Right? Because from this system, what a business owner does is they actually leverage their time to create more hours in a day. Just look at that example, right? Where an employee or a self-employed can only get a maximum of 24 hours a day. And if they personally work it every single hour, a business owner leverages that time, leverages the time of other people, and leverages that income, where he is able to now have a system that's in place, right? In this case, it's the McDonald's system in place, but it's a business system where it's generating, and this is just like, let's say the front half, right? There's still a shift over. Some places McDonald's open 24 hours. This is just a basic system where the business owner is now leveraging 80 hours in a day, okay? The crazy thing about this is that if the business owner decides to go on vacation, this is still generating an income, okay? Whether the business owner is inside McDonald's or if he steps out of it, this asset that he's created, this system that he has created is now, not forever, but is now creating a income, okay? Crazy thing about this is that the challenges with this is actually starting to disappear. When I say disappear is because the main barrier why most people don't go into business is because back in the day, if you wanted to open up a franchise for McDonald's, you had to have a cap of $1 million, $1 million to $5 million to be able just to buy into the franchise, right? And after you do that, you take about a years of training just to become a franchise owner. And then from there, you start hiring the people, developing all the people, training the people, and getting everything set up. And then after 2 to 3 years, then you'll start creating some income. And after maybe 5 to 7 years after that, you'll probably be getting your profits, right? So you're spending about 3 to 5 years before you see a profit. That was one of the barriers. Now, the crazy thing is that in the time that we live in today, you can actually start doing stuff online. So this business system is available both offline and online, which is just insane, which actually helps out because now online, you can start opening up businesses for thousands of dollars or a couple $100. And there are people out there to this day that are starting to build that bridge and starting up their business with no investment at all. As long as you have time, the internet, and a device, you can actually open up an online business, and they start creating assets, right? So once I've heard this, you can actually start applying it to anything, and it just really blew my mind away because this video that you're watching is an asset for me, right? I made this on December 21st, 2019 at 6:25 p.m. Whenever you're watching this, however many people are watching it, this video is still working for me, right? It's an asset. Right now, I'm just providing information, but when you take that into what marketers are doing, when you take that into creating online assets and the content that you put out, now you start developing and actually approaching it with a different mindset, which is the entrepreneur mindset, right? So that's just a brief of this mindset, which is actually pretty intense. And the fourth quadrant, which is like the holy grail of this cash flow quadrant, is the investment quadrant, where literally you take money to create more money, right? You take your money, you put it into real estate, you put it into stocks, you put it into Forex markets, your money works for you, right? It definitely goes all over the place, but eventually it makes money for you, right? So if you've ever invested into cryptocurrency, or if you ever heard about that, back in the day, I believe it was 9 to 12 years ago, back in the day when Bitcoin just started, people were buying it for $5 to get 1 Bitcoin. If they held on to that $5 and they kept it on now, that $5, they didn't invest anything more than $5, now would have actually is worth about $40,000 to $45,000, right? And that's just your money working for you, right? So that's just being able to invest in this market, right? So stock markets, real estates, and that kind of stuff. And again, this is the holy grail simply because money just never sleeps. It can work for you 24/7, right? So that's all I want to close with off with this whole cash flow quadrant. And like, this is just insane, right? So the way that it actually works is that on your left-hand side, as an employee, you trade your time, you educate yourself to trade your time to make money. As a self-employee, you educate yourself to have more control of your time to make money. But as a business owner, you educate yourself to create assets and systems. And as an investor, you educate yourself to use money to create more money, okay? This is a concept that opened my mind and has changed my life forever, right? And I hope you can see why, right? So this is just the basics of the cash flow quadrant. If you made it this far, a way for me to say thank you is actually in the links below. Like I said, this all came from the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. I'm including the Rich Dad, Poor Dad PDF file right in the links below. Don't worry, you don't have to opt in for anything. It's just a Google link. And if you've learned something from this video, please feel free to like this video. And if you want to keep updated with my journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button, and I'll see you in the next video. Till next time, one love. Peace.